Hey up, Poppet, you alright?
Hello and welcome back to episode 19, game week 19 of the 92-93 Premier League season.
Let's have a look at what the front pages of the newspapers have been saying this week.
And we start with some royal news. Diana is set to spend Christmas under the same roof as Charles. The Queen is anxious to have all the family together at Sandringham for the traditional time of love and goodwill. She has appealed to her daughter-in-law to join them, and Diana seems certain to agree. Isn't it great to see families coming together and spending time together at Christmas? And staying with royal news, bookies William Hill have been flooded with takers on their 6-1 on odds that Charles will renounce his right to the throne in 1993. Betting was temporarily halted earlier after fears that royal insiders might be cashing in. You money-grabbing buggers.
And a store boss at London's John Lewis has been sacked after taking 300 days off sick in 2 years. Christopher Warner also took 3 days holiday but claimed yesterday he was dismissed unfairly. He's earning £17,000 a year as a manager at John Lewis, and he told an industrial tribunal that he suffered from gallstones and depression. The hearing continues. In festive news, children have been banned from sitting on Santa's knee, and that's to protect the poor chap's reputation. Shopping centre bosses are directing youngsters to a stool beside Santa this Christmas. But if they absolutely insist on climbing onto his lap, a parent must stand guard. One angry mum, Tracy Diener, 22, paid £3.50 for her daughter to chat to Santa and was then stopped from putting her tot on his knee. Tracy, from Handsworth in Birmingham, said she'd been told you wouldn't put a child on a stranger's knee at any other time of year. And centre manager Richard Cook said, "We trust our Santas and the children, but we have heard of incidents in other shopping centres and it's a matter of concern."
And there's a great deal down at Dixon's. Anybody wanting to make their own home videos? A brand new Sanyo camcorder complete with a remote control. All for just £489.99. You'll have to be quick though, it only lasts for 3 days.
Now, troubling news coming in from the train network where a teenage pop pest was plunged into stunned silence when an angry commuter cut the cord on his headphones. The well-dressed city gent sprang into action as the youth sat with his eyes closed listening to a thumping disco beat. He reached into his briefcase, whipped out scissors and promptly snipped through the lead on the Sony Walkman-style stereo. Passengers on the Intercity Express from London's Liverpool Street to Norwich burst out cheering as the stunned youth stared in disbelief at the severed cable. One lady, Lizzie King, 34 years old, said it was absolutely wonderful. The young lad was absolutely gobsmacked. He didn't know what to do. He just sat there with the severed cable in his hand. Then the train stopped, he got up and moved to a different carriage. Awful news. Vandalism. And English Rose Claire Smith is spot on course to lift the Miss World crown tonight. All the other girls are back in the reigning Miss UK to our first winner since the 70s.
And there's a brilliant competition over in the Daily Mirror. 30,000 Sonic the Hedgehog pin badges to be won through Sega and Toys R Us. But enough of all of that. Let's get to the reason why you're really here. Let's press that rewind button. Let's go back. Let's relive the league.
I'll see you there.
And first up this week, we have Middlesbrough making their first ever live TV appearance as a Premier League club, and they host Chelsea. Borough come into this in great spirits after ending Blackburn's unbeaten away win last week when they beat them 3-2. But Chelsea, they are the form team coming into this game, having won 4 and drawn 1 of their last 6. What a battle we have ahead.
Middlesbrough line up with Stephen Pears in goal, Nicky Mohan, Derek White, Jimmy Phillips and Curtis Fleming at the back. In midfield are Andy Peake, Jamie Pollock, Tommy Wright and Craig Hignett, with John Hendry and Paul Wilkinson up front. On the bench are Ian Ironside, Mark Proctor and Graham Kavanagh. For Chelsea, it's Kevin Hitchcock in goal, Frank Sinclair, David Lee, Mal Donaghy and Graham Lasso at the back. In midfield are Gareth Hall, Eddie Newton, Andy Townsend, Dennis Wise and Graham Stewart, with Robert Fleck up front on his own. On the bench are Nick Colgan, Erland Johnson and Craig Burley. Today's game was less Middlesbrough v Chelsea, more Craig Hignett v Kevin Hitchcock. And it turned into a bit of a personal battle between the two to see who could outperform the other. Craig Hignett, great shot there. Great save by Hitchcock. Not long later, Tommy Wright got the ball. He came inside, shot, it came off Hignett, and there was Hitchcock again. 0-0. From the resulting corner, the ball came in from Jimmy Phillips. It was headed clear, as far as guess who? Craig Hignett with a great shot towards the top corner and a superb save from Kevin Hitchcock. That's got to be up there for one of the saves of the season so far. Into the second half then, Middlesbrough get a free kick. There's a few men looming over it, but the favourite looks like new signing Craig Hignett. Let's see what's going to happen here. He shoots on goal and he's at the bar. Hitchcock was nowhere near it. Should have done better there, Kevin, really, to be fair. Chelsea tried to break away. Middlesbrough won the ball back. Nothing happened. No. Oh.
A very entertaining goalless draw there. A point was good enough to move Chelsea up to second place in the Premier League. This is before the rest of the teams play of the weekend, though, as this was a Friday night special. And next up, we've got Aston Villa hosting Nottingham Forest. Forest battered Leeds 4-1 last week and will be hoping to cause another upset this week. But everything points towards a home win here for me. Villa are flying up in third, Forest rock bottom, and have only got one win on the road this season.
Villa line up with Nigel Spink in goal, Sean Teal, Neil Cox, Paul McGrath, Steve Staunton and Earl Barrett at the back. In midfield, Gary Parker, Kevin Richardson and Ray Houghton, with Cyril Regis and Dean Saunders up front. On the bench are Michael Oakes, Matthias Breitkreutz and Dwight York. For Forest, Mark Crossley in goal, Steve Chettle, Carl Tyler, Stuart Pearce and Brian Laws at the back. In midfield, Roy Keane, Scott Gemmell, Neil Webb and Kingsley Black, with Nigel Clough and Lee Glover up front. On the bench are Andy Marriott, Toddy Orlickson and Gary Bannister. Forest looking to build on that thrashing they gave to Leeds last week, and on 9 minutes today, Nigel Clough played a great ball forward for young Irishman Roy Keane to run onto and expertly lob Nigel Spink to get his third goal in 2 games and to give Forest the lead. Everyone's saying Forest are far too good to go down, and at the minute, they're looking like they're turning things around. And that, of course, has a lot to do with the form of Irishman Keane and new signing Neil Webb playing together in the centre of the park. Great ball through by Clough. Excellent speed shown by Keane. And even better composure. 1-0 Forest. Villa are always going to look to get back into the game, though. They've been on excellent form this season. And after 33 minutes, Mark Crossley shanked a goal kick. It went forward. Carl Taylor, I don't know what he was doing. And Cyril Regis copied Roy Keane and lobbed Mark Crossley to equalise for Aston Villa. He's a legend of the game, is Big Cyril. And that's his first ever Premier League goal. Forest tried to keep the pressure on, though, and tried to take the lead back. And not long later, Neil Webb fired one from 30 yards. But it went just wide at Nigel Spink's post. Just After half-time, though, Villa got a free kick 40 yards out. Ray Houghton whipped it in, and there was big Paul McGrath to expertly head home to give Villa the lead. It's unfortunate on Forest, but Villa are the form side, and that's a superb header by the Irishman. Forest kept plugging away, though, and a short while later, Kingsley Black whipped a corner in. It got headed clear to the edge of the box towards Roy Keane, but this time he fired over the bar. The chances kept coming though, and after a mix-up between Sean Teal and Paul McGrath at the back, Nigel Clough found himself through on goal, but fired wide. Then it was Villa's turn to try and lengthen the lead, and Steve Staunton got the ball and raced forward, shot from 20 yards. It took a massive deflection and went just wide. And in the dying minutes, Forest managed to fashion himself another chance through the midfield pairing of Webb and Keane. It's a great ball forward, great pace by Keane. Aleksson, well, that's awful by Toddy, but Keane's adamant that's a foul. But no luck. 2-1 Villa.
And it was the old boys of the Villa team who found the back of the net today. 33 and 34 years old, getting on the score sheet. And it's Cyril Regis, the oldest person to score in Premier League history. We can't be bothered to go back and check, but feel free to have a look and let us know. Another goal for Roy Keane too this week. 3 in his last 2 now. 2-1 Villa. And now it's the North London derby. The first ever North London derby in the Premier League era at White Hart Lane. This could not come at a worse time for Arsenal, having lost their last 3 games, dropping like a lead balloon in the table, down to 7th. Pre-season title favourites, you're having a laugh, aren't you? Can Spurs paint North London white? Let's see.
For Tottenham, Eric Torsfet in goal, Neil Ruddock, Gary Mabbott, Justin Edinburgh and Stone Cold Dean Austin at the back. In midfield are David Howells, Vinnie Samways, Paul Allen and Naeem, with Gordon Jury and Teddy Sheringham up front. On the bench are Ian Walker, Gudney Bergson and Nicky Barmby. For Arsenal, David Seaman in goal, Tony Adams, Steve Bold, Pal Lyderson and Nigel Winterburn at the back. Midfield, David Hilliard, John Jensen, Paul Merson and Ray Parler, with Kevin Campbell and Ian Wright up front. On the bench, Alan Miller, David O'Leary and Anders Limpar. After 20 minutes today, Tottenham decided to play themselves into trouble when Gary Mabbott gave it back to Torsfet. He evaded the challenger right, got past Kevin Campbell somehow, back to Mabbott, who found Paul Allen, who turned brilliantly past Winterburn and ran forward. Found Gordon Jury out on the wing. He passed it inside. Pal Lyderson's cleared it, but he's giving it straight back to Paul Allen, who slotted home past David Seaman to give Tottenham the lead in the first ever North London derby of the Premier League era. That's Allen's second goal of the season. But what was Torsfed doing? Goalkeepers don't play out from the back, do they? He should have hoofed that into row Z, but he didn't. Great ball by Lyderson to Allen, and it's a great finish. 1-0 Tottenham.
And only for the second time in 13 derbies have Tottenham come away with a win. 4 defeats in a row now for the Gunners, dropping to 8th in the table. Yes, 8th in the table. Brilliant to see Paul Allen get that decisive goal, and what a brilliant team goal it was. 1-0 to the Tottenham. And now we have Southampton against Coventry. The Saints are making a good go of pulling themselves away from the relegation zone, having not been beaten in their last 5 games. They are strong at home, having only lost twice there all season. And Coventry, they're one of the best away teams in the league so far, only losing once on their travels. They also have a red-hot Mickey Quinn in their lineup, having scored 4 goals in his last 3 games. Let's see if he can continue that goal-scoring streak today.
Southampton line up with Tim Flowers in goal, Richard Hall, Steve Wood, Francis Bernali and Jeff Kenner at the back, with Mickey Adams, Terry Hurlock, Neil Madison and Matt Letizia in midfield, and Perry Groves and Ian Dowie up front. On the bench are Ian Andrews, Jason Dodd and Nicky Banger. For Coventry, it's Steve Grizovic in goal, Phil Babb, Kenny Sansom, Peter Atherton and Brian Burrows at the back, Lee Hurst, Lloyd McGrath, Kevin Gallagher and Peter Unlove in midfield, with Robert Rosario and Mickey Quinn up front. On the bench are Jonathan Gould, David Bust and John Williams. On 6 minutes today, that man, Mickey Quinn, found the net again after a superb cross from Lee Hurst. 1-0 to Coventry. Last week, Neil Maddison scored his first goal for 3 years after an assist from Ian Dowie. And 3 minutes later, Ian Dowie got on the end of a corner and Neil Maddison prodded it home to make it 1-1. On 25 minutes, Kevin Gallagher got the ball out on the left wing, put the ball into the box, and Robert Rosario was in acres of space, smashed the ball against Tim Flower's chest. And there was Mickey Quinn to tap home from a yard to make it 2-1 to Coventry. Just after the hour mark, Mickey Adams whacked a free kick forward, Ian Dowie headed it forward, Neil Maddison whacked it right up in the air, Richard Hall headed it back, and Ian Dowie finished on the volley to equalise for Southampton.
And points are shared as Southampton extend their unbeaten run to 6 games. Super Mickey Quinn just cannot stop scoring. He makes it 6 goals in 4 now. What a player. Him and Robert Rosario, what a partnership they are creating together. 2-2. We now have the runaway league leaders, Norwich City, travelling to Old Trafford to take on Manchester United. The Red Devils cannot let Norwich extend that lead anymore. They come into this winning their last 3 games, and Mark Hughes has scored in all of them victories. Is that enough to keep new signing Eric Cantona out the lineup? We'll see. Mark Robbins, he also makes return to Old Trafford, and he will be desperate to get on the score sheet. Let's see how he gets on.
For Man United, Peter Schmeichel in goal, Steve Bruce, Gary Pallister, Dennis Irwin and Paul Parker at the back. In midfield, Paul Ince, Ryan Giggs and Lee Sharp, with Eric Cantona, Brian McClare and Mark Hughes up front. On the bench is Fraser Digby, Clayton Blackmore and Andrei Kanchelskis. For Norwich, Brian Gunn in goal, Ian Butterworth, John Paulston, Mark Bowen and Ian Culverhouse at the back. In midfield, Darryl Such, Ian Crook, David Phillips and Rule Fox, with Darren Beckford and Mark Robbins up front. On the bench is Andy Marshall, Gary Megson and Chris Sutton. Not much to report on today, except in the 14th minute, Lee Sharp put a cross in, and then Darryl Such must have been the fella last week who had that big punt on United to win the league, as he slipped one straight into the path of Mark Sparky Hughes to win the game for Man United. The cross took a big deflection, but what on earth was Such doing there? Great turn by Hughes and great finish.
Well, not the most entertaining of games, but Man United deserve the 3 points today. They are now up to 3rd in the table, and Norwich still sit top, but only 5 points clear now.
A big hello from me, Charles, and a huge thank you to Premiership stars for giving me the middle-aged dream of commenting on not 1, but 2 Premiership games from the 92-93 season. You can find me on my socials here. You can subscribe to Premiership stars here. And please do enjoy my audio of 2 quality games. I'll be commentating on QPR against Crystal Palace from 1992. It was just before Christmas. And let me paint you a scene. QPR are just about to go into a good part of the season where they're just behind the league leaders, but they're still in touch. Elsewhere, I will also be commentating on Manchester City against Ipswich. An all-time classic. I shall let you decide how it gets on. Big shout out to Arsenal. This is a 1993-94 kit. It's as early as I can get, but I hope you enjoy it. As I say, I'm Charles. Please enjoy this. I'm going to switch over to audio, listen to the guys, give them some love, give me some love, and please do relive the league.
Hello, hello. It is big time fun stuff here at Loftus Road as we see 7th place Queen's Park Rangers hosting relegation strugglers Crystal Palace. Now QPR, they stopped a run of 3 losses with a narrow win over Oldham last week and come into this game with only 1 loss in 9 at home so far this season. If it's anything other than a home win, I will eat my hat. Palace, on the other hand, only have one away win this season, but they'll be raring to go after beating Sheffield United this time last week. Jerry Francis lines up like you'd expect with his classic 5-3-2 formation. In goal we have Jan Stejskal. In defence, Alan McDonald, Darren Peacock, Clive Wilson, Dave Bardsley and a 21-year-old Andy Impey. In the midfield, three players looking to be on Jerry Francis' Christmas list is Ray Wilkins, Ian Holloway and Andy Sinton. Up front, two of my favourites, Gary Penrise and Les Ferdinand. A little fact about Les Ferdinand, if I think about myself in the future, I suspect I will go to school with Les Ferdinand's son, who was never picked to play in any of the football teams. Good times. For Crystal Palace, it's as you'd expect. The old classic 6-1-3 formation. Steve Coppell puts Nigel Martyn in goal with the slickest hair you're going to see in the 90s. Defensive-wise, it's John Humphrey, Chris Coleman, Richard Shaw, Gareth Southgate, Andy Thorne and of course Eric Young. Into the midfield, he does a lot more than people think he does. It's Simon Osborne all on his own. It can be lonely, sometimes in the middle of the park. Up front, the classic Eddie McGoldrick, Chris Armstrong and George Ndar. Forward line should give Steve Coppell the opportunity to catch Queen's Park Rangers on the counter-attack. Right, the mascots are off the pitch. Let's get some real football going. You don't need to invite them twice to see if they fancy a little cheeky Andy Impey run down the right-hand side. He does well to beat his defender. And oh, is it going to work? Sinton? Penrahys! Unbelievable scenes. He salutes the crowd. A Merry Christmas for everyone at Loftus Road. But one thing about Crystal Palace is you cannot keep a good Palace man down. And in Eddie McGoldrick, I feel there's going to be goals in this game. He was challenged by the chairman to get 7 this season, and there's number 6, a quick one over the top, and he just reacted quicker than any of the QPR defence. They do look leaky this year. Here we go again. Palace, can they take a cheeky lead? Oh, that's not how to defend. Oh, foul ref. Not in 1992. Bosh! Oh no. This defending's terrible. Here he goes. Oh, unbelievable scenes. That's an 8th goal for Chris Armstrong, I believe. In they pop, they're 2-1 ahead. We are getting very dangerously close to me eating my own hat here. So long as the keeper doesn't give the ball to him, I'm sure we'll be fine. Oh, what's that for a clearance? Eddie McGoldrick, he can't, can he? Oh, apparently he can. He's playing like a man who could move to Arsenal in the future. He was challenged to get £10,000 if he could get 7 or more goals, and there you go, just before Christmas. Merry Christmas, Eddie McGoldrick. Palace run out winners, 3-1. The only other points of note there, injuries for Chris Coleman and George Ndar, who were replaced by Bobby Bowery and Grant Watts respectively. Let's see how long they're both sidelined for. On the pitch, a pretty good game, only 2 yellow cards going out, one to Alan McDonald for QPR and of course Chris Armstrong getting a yellow card in that second half. We march on, the march towards Christmas happens, the games will never stop. Make sure you listen out for the next one. Welcome back to another 90s classic game of kickball as Ipswich take on Manchester City at Portman Road. The Tractor Boys are still beaming after winning Division 2 last season, but for the fans it's been a bit of a drab start. 11 draws out of their 18 leaves them in somehow 6th position in the table, but it's not been that fun in terms of getting those wins on the board. Manchester City have a terrible away record at Ipswich, no win in 30 years, and their current form isn't much cop either. They've lost 4 out of their last 9 away games this term, and they look desperately in need of a rich owner to bail them out from abject failure and irrelevance in English football. Ipswich line up for this one in what I think is the kit of the 92-93 season, looking fantastic. In goal, we have Clive Baker at 33 years of age, looking like a stalwart. In defence, Phil Whelan, David Linnigan, Neil Thompson all form an aggressive back 3. Into the midfield, Mick Stockwell, Jason Dazelle, Gavin Johnson, and of course new boy Boncho Genchev, who's just signed from Bobby Robson's Sporting Lisbon, makes his debut, alongside one of the oldest and finest moustaches in football, John Walk. Steve Whitton on the right wing completes that midfield lineup. Up front, Paul Goddard does it all on his own. Onto the substitutes bench, they've got 3 today, which is fairly exciting. All in their 20s, Jason Winters in goal, Eddie Udes and Vlado Bozanovski. For Man City, Peter Reid has gone absolutely mental. In goal, Tony Cotton Candy. In defence, Keith Curly-Whirly, Terry's Chocolate Phelan and Ian Brightwell. hang on, is that another right back? Andy Hill. Wow, scratchy head time. Peter Reid picks himself for the first time since taking over as player manager, aged 36 years old, as a defensive midfielder, alongside Steve McMahon, Gary Flitcroft, Rick Holden, David White, and up front the ever-dependable Niall Quinn. They also mentioned 3 substitutes on the bench: Martin Margetson, 21 years old, Fitzroy Simpson, and a spare forward, Mike Sharon. Right, on to the action, and time for some 90s shithousery tiki-taka. I haven't seen this one before, I am going to be raw dogging it. Let's go. Man City look to be on the attack. Oh, can he get round? He can indeed. What a lovely bit of action. He crosses it in. Gary Flitcroft. That is that man's first goal in international football. No, sorry, not international. Club football, professional footballer. Ipswich, they'll be wanting to get a goal back just after half-time here. Keepers, oh, for fuck's sake. Mick Stockwell with an easy header off a Tony Coton error. What a plum. Right, let's see how this progresses. It surely ends 1-1. Corner comes in. There's the winning header. Oh, Niall Quinn off the line. Bosh! What a header from 30 yards out. Unbelievable scenes there. Who was that? Gavin Johnson? Wow. Right, free kick coming in. Surely City can keep this game competitive. It's down to Goddard. Goddard to goal. He does what he does best. He's a natural goal scorer, and I believe that gives Ipswich another win. Let's see it through one more time. In we come. Gary Flitcroft, goal. It was such a nice opener for Man City, and I really felt they were going somewhere. But then Ipswich came. They came strong. They went over the top. The defending is awful. The cross is great. The keeping is terrible. Mick Stockwell, he is such a cheeky chappy. If you're going to see a better headed goal this season, you've got to let me know about it, because I don't think they exist in... Bosh! What a goal! Unbelievable scenes. A little nod down. Goddard's there. The keeper's got to do better, but surely that's it for Ipswich. They've won their 6th game in 7. These are the boys on form. Go the Tractor Boy! Ipswich will feel very happy moving into next week's East Anglian derby versus Norwich as they look to progress up the table at Norwich's expense. A great win for Ipswich. Man City, you are abysmal. I don't want to see you playing in the Premier League anymore. I think you need some relegations and come back when you got a bit more oil money. I have been Charles. This has been incredible. Please do follow me at Chuck Davie on all social media handles, including TikTok and YouTube. And for now, give a like and a subscribe to the Premiership Stars. This has been Relive the League. The 90s is back. Can't wait for my Oasis tickets. A good day.
We now have 2 teams down in the bottom 6 as Everton travel to Bramall Lane to take on Sheffield United. The Toffees won the Merseyside bragging rights last week, so surely a Sheffield United team who struggle for goals will not be difficult to see off. Let's see.
Sheffield United line up with Alan Kelly in goal, Paul Beasley, John Pemberton, David Barnes and Kevin Gage at the back. In midfield are John Gannon, Paul Rogers, Mitch Ward and Glyn Hodges, with Adrian Littlejohn and Brian Dean up front. On the bench, Jamie Hoyland and Alan Cork. For Everton, Neville Southall in goal, Gary Ablett, Martin Keown, Dave Watson, Matt Jackson and Ian Snowden at the back, with Barry Horn, Preki and Peter Beardsley in midfield, Stuart Barlow and Mo Johnston up front. On the bench are Jason Caton, Peter Beagrie and Paul Rideout. Everton should be flying after that great win against Liverpool, but after 34 minutes today, Sheffield United got a corner, Brian Dean headed it down, and there was Adrian Littlejohn to stab it home to give Sheffield United their 2nd Christmas party of the season.
You know what? That was awful tactics from Everton today. Who did the thing they were playing? Inter Milan? Putting 5 at the back against a team that had only scored 3 goals in the last 5 games, whose main striker, Brian Dean, hasn't scored at home since the opening day of the season. Howard Kendall, hang your head in shame. 1-0 Sheffield United. And now we have 2 struggling teams as Wimbledon host Oldham. There is no wonder that this is the lowest crowd of the season so far. Oldham have the worst defence in the league, but they need to be strong today to avoid the potential of dropping into that relegation zone.
For Wimbledon, it's Hans Sagers in goal, a back 4 of Dean Blackwell, John Scales, Roger Joseph and Brian McAllister. In midfield are Neil Ardley, Vinnie Jones, Laurie Sanchez and Robbie Earle, with Andy Clark and Dean Holdsworth up front. On the bench are Neil Sullivan, Steve Talboys and John Fashanu. For Oldham, Paul Gerrard in goal, Steve Redmond, Richard Jobson, Neil Poynton and Gunnar Haller at the back. In midfield are Neil Adams, Mike Milligan, Mark Brennan and Nick Henry, with Ian Olney and Graham Sharp up front. On the bench, John Keeley, Craig Fleming and Roger Palmer. On 18 minutes, Wimbledon got a throw, and it was a world-famous Vinnie Jones long throw in. John Scales headed it on, and it ended up with Neil Ardley, who fired past Paul Gerrard to give Wimbledon the lead. And 4 minutes later, Wimbledon had a free kick. Laurie Sanchez dinked it over the top. There was a bit of confusion at the back, and Dean Holdsworth stabbed home to make it 2-0 Wimbledon. And then, another 4 minutes later, history repeated itself. Another Vinnie Jones long throwing in, another flick on, and it eventually found itself with Neil Ardley at the back post, who slotted home to make it 3-0. There wasn't much excitement expected, but the 3,386 fans in attendance got the opposite of what they were expecting, and pretty much straight from the second half kickoff, Ian Olney played in Mark Brennan, and Oldham made it 3-1. And Oldham's brief reprieve didn't last too long, around 5 minutes, and then that woeful defence kicked in again as Robbie Earle played in Andy Clark. 4-1 Wimbledon. And just a minute later, the Oldham defence were all over the shop again. They didn't know where they were going, where the ball was, and then Dean Holdsworth stabbed in Laurie Sanchez's header to make it 5-1. But, typical with Oldham, they don't know when the goose is cooked, and on 65 minutes, the ball found itself with Mike Milligan, and he played a 1-2 with Hans Sagers. To complete the scoring, 5-2 Wimbledon.
Two poor teams going at it. 7-goal thriller, but it was 3 goals in a 9-minute spell for Wimbledon that settled it. Oldham are only the second team this season, the other being Arsenal, to leave Selhurst Park empty-handed. Wimbledon have leapfrogged Oldham. They're outside of the relegation zone. The Latics are now in that bottom 3. It's so hard to get out of there. Wimbledon have got Forest next. Are they going on a bit of a run? Are they going up that table a bit, Wimbledon? Let's see. And next up, we have a Yorkshire derby. We've got Leeds against Sheffield Wednesday. Both got beat last week. Leeds got beat by Forest, and Wednesday got beat by Villa. Both are in very similar positions in the league, both down in 15th and 16th. Leeds have only got 1 win in the last 10 matches, but they are a good team at home. That fortress that is Ellen Road, they have only lost once there all season. Will that prove strong enough for them today? Let's see.
Leeds line up with John Lukic in goal, Chris Fairclough, Chris White, Tony DeRigo and John Newsom at the back, Gary McAllister, Gordon Strachan, Gary Speed and David Rocastle in midfield, and Rod Wallace and Lee Chapman up front. The subs are Mervyn Day, Steve Hodge and Imre Varadi. For Sheffield Wednesday, Chris Woods in goal, Nigel Pearson, Paul Warhurst, Nigel Worthington and Roland Nielsen at the back. In midfield are Carlton Palmer, John Sheridan, John Harkes and Chris Waddle, with David Hurst and Mark Bright up front. On the bench is Kevin Pressman, Chris Bart-Williams and Gordon Watson. Just after the half-hour mark, Leeds got a free kick. The witty Gordon Strachan played it quickly over the top. Nigel Pearson headed it, and it only went as far as Gary Speed, who dribbled it into the net from the edge of the box with his head. 1-0 Leeds. On 37 minutes, Sheff Wednesday got himself back in the game when Roland Nielsen raced forward and smashed home from the edge of the box via a massive deflection. A minute after half-time, Gordon Strachan got the ball on the right and showed some great pace and feet to get to the byline, whip the ball in, and it landed on that trusty head of Lee Chapman to give Leeds a 2-1 lead. All credit to the little ginger wizard. Then, in the 79th minute, Gordon Strachan got the ball out on the right again. Again showed some great pace and quick feet. Flicked the ball in. It was cleared as far as Gary Speed, who smashed towards goal. But the final touch was from Imre Varadi playing for the first time in a year to give Leeds the 3-1 win.
And the 29,000 fans packed into Ellen Road today were treated to a 4-goal thriller. Lee Chapman's 10th goal of the season. A vital 3 points for Leeds. 3-1. And finally this week, we bring you the Super Sunday game between Liverpool and Blackburn Rovers. This is Kenny Dalglish's first visit back to Anfield since he left them 2 years ago. Blackburn's early season form has seriously dropped off as they have won only once in their last 7 games. We have the biggest crowd of the season so far, packed into Anfield. Let's see if the entertainment is what we all expect.
For Liverpool, it's Mike Cooper in goal, Torben Picnic, Mark Wright, Rob Jones and Steve Nicol at the back. In midfield are Mike Marsh, Jamie Redknapp, Steve McManaman and John Barnes. With Ronnie Rosenthal and Ian Rush returns up front. On the bench are Bruce Grobbelaar, Paul Stewart and Mark Walters. For Blackburn, Bobby Mims in goal, Colin Hendry, Kevin Moran, Alan Wright and David May at the back. In midfield are Gordon Cowans, Tim Sherwood, Mark Atkins and Jason Wilcox. With Mike Newell and Alan Shearer up front. On the bench are just Roy Wegley and Stuart Ripley. Kenny Dalglish returns to Liverpool for the first time since leaving them 2 years ago, and rightly so, receives a hero's welcome at Anfield. But after today, there might be a new hero at Anfield. On 77 minutes, Jamie Redknapp found Mark Walters out on the wing. He cut inside, little step over and smashed home to give Liverpool the lead. Kenny's looking glum for the first time a lead's been taken at Anfield. But only 3 minutes later, Blackburn got himself a corner. Colin Hendry hit it back into the box. And Blackburn's new goal-scoring hero, Alan Shearer, with a wonderful finish to equalise for Blackburn. And then 5 minutes later, in the 85th minute, Ian Rush found Steve McManaman out on the right. He put the ball across the face of the goal. And there was Mark Walters to win it at the Kop end for Liverpool, 2-1. A 90-minute game with 13 minutes madness at the end. Souness is delighted.
And what a win for Liverpool. Mark Walters came off the bench to score twice. And a shout for goal of the season so far with a cracker from Alan Shearer. That's 14 for the season now for him. Blackburn dropped from second down to fifth. 2-1 Liverpool.
Right then, that brings us to the end of episode 19, game week 19 of the 92-93 season. Let's have a look at what the back pages are saying.
Well, the Mirror, they go with a scandalous headline. Fergie has no regrets about letting Robbins go. Mark Robbins has been an absolute sensation this season so far. The second top scorer in the league, helping Norwich sit comfortably at the top of the table. Man U have signed a Frenchman, Eric Cantona, as a panic buy when the homegrown talent was already there. Strange one for Fergie to say he has no regrets. My favourite player this season is Mark Robbins, as everybody knows. Fuming.
Not happy, are you, Ben? Somebody else who isn't happy is Ian Wright. He's already been involved in one punch-up this season, and it was a bit of a fiery North London derby. Arsenal didn't come out too well from that one. And Ian Wright had another punch-up. So this lad needs to watch his discipline, doesn't he? Arsenal are looking to dip into the transfer market to change their poor run of form recently. And lifelong Arsenal fan Warren Barton, who's at Wimbledon, is a £2 million target. Also, they're doing battle with Napoli for £2 million rated Swedish midfielder Stefan Schwarz.
And good news for Paul Gascoigne fans, also known as Gas in Italy. He won Goal of the Week for Lazio, which was also live on Channel 4, Football Italia. And staying with Gaza, a young Roman girl who was just woke up from a coma, her first words were asking where Gaza was. He was so touched with the news that he went to go and visit her. Lovely touch by Gaza. And David Platt has denied all rumours of him returning to England. He is more than happy to stay in Italy.
Back over in England, Tottenham have stepped into the race for £2 million QPR forward Les Ferdinand. Liverpool are the favourites to sign him, though. Souness was in contact last week, but Terry Venables has asked his old pal Jerry Francis to hold off until he can afford a bid, and QPR are holding out for 2.3 million. Positive news for John Salako. He says he'll be able to play again after phase. He won't be able to after having his second knee construction in 2 years. Great news for John there. And Liverpool are also facing a heavy battle in trying to keep John Barnes. Sampdoria are trying to tempt him over to Italy. They did that with Des Walker in the summer. They've got some pulling power over in Italy. Let's see if they can keep hold of their man there.
And you can also see that Chelsea have joined Arsenal and Spurs in the queue chasing Gillingham's central defender, Tony Butler. And Blackburn are set to steal Swedish international Patrick Anderson from under the noses of Leeds and Norwich.
And finally, Angela Webb from West Drayton Middlesex won the Brian Robson VIP Day Out competition that we popped in last week. Let's have a look at the league table. The bottom half, Forest, are now 4 points adrift at the foot of the table. Sheffield United have fired above Everton in the league, with them only now a point off the relegation zone. Wimbledon closed the gap with an excellent win. That's looking like a tight relegation fight. Sheffield Wednesday look like they could be drawn into that. And Southampton's great form are solidifying them as a mid-table team along with Leeds.
And to the top half of the table, Norwich remain top of the lot, but after a loss this week, the lead is cut down to 5 points. Blackburn dropped from second down to fifth. A great win for Villa and Man U to put them second and third respectively. And Arsenal all the way down in 8th now. And over to the goal scorers. Only 3 off the list scoring this week. Shearer now on 14. Lee Chapman up to 10. And Mark Hughes on 9.
And lastly, a massive thanks to Charles Davie for doing the guest commentary this week. Hope you got to fulfil a lifelong dream there, mate. Go follow him on all his socials, which he did plug on his bit. Anything else from you, Ben, for this week?
It just goes to... all we need to add is, if you're listening at this point, make sure you put a like, subscribe and all that chisel on our YouTube for us. It helps us massively.
Any kind of comment or whatever, come over to Twitter and your TikToks and your Instagrams as well. And if you ever want to do any guest commentary, just get in touch. Yeah. I think that's it. Right then.
And I will see you next week.
You will, and I'll see you later.